Good evening and welcome to California Today. I'm David Lam, sitting in for Liang Zhang. Here's a preview of some of today's stories. 7 people have been federally charged for their alleged involvement in fentanyl-related deaths. The Justice Department says they sold narcotics laced with the lethal drug. The Los Angeles Sheriff is investigating a video that was leaked to the LA Times. The sheriff is investigating a reporter, but one expert says there is First Amendment protection. And in Southern California's Orange County, a group of officials and survivors of violent crime came together to remember loved ones lost. Friends and family told heartbreaking stories of their loved ones. San Jose police have released the names and photos of the 3 suspects involved in the kidnapping of a 3-month-old baby. SJPD have arrested Jose Roman Portillo, 28, Yesenia Guadalupe Ramirez, 43, and Baldomio Sandoval, 37. Police identified Portillo as the one who entered the home and kidnapped the infant. During the investigation, detectives learned Ramirez was driving the baby and the baby's grandmother to run errands. Sandoval was later identified as an additional suspect. 3-month-old Brandon Cuellar was kidnapped on Monday afternoon. He was safely found after a 20-hour search and has since been with his mother. Last week, the Justice Department announced charges against 7 people for fentanyl-related deaths. The cases involved illicit narcotics laced with the potent drugs, which one official said is the key reason for the spike in deaths.
The U.S. Department of Justice announced 7 federal criminal cases against alleged drug dealers on April 22nd. They allegedly sold fentanyl-laced narcotics that led to fatal overdoses in Orange County. A federal drug enforcement task force investigated the cases. Fentanyl is the main cause in most of the opioid-related deaths in the greater Los Angeles area. In one case, 3 people died from overdoses in Newport Beach, California. Victims in the 7 cases were of diverse backgrounds, including 2 minors and a community college student. Federal Drug Enforcement Agent Bill Bodner told the Epoch Times that the cases are a reminder that drug-related deaths are more than just numbers, but consequences that affect our friends and loved ones. Bodner said that they are intent on bringing justice to victims and their families while putting drug dealers on notice that even selling 1 pill can have harsh federal penalties. He added that deception is a key component to the increase in fentanyl-related deaths. In most of the cases, the victims did not know that they were ingesting fentanyl, which can be deadly in tiny amounts. Some alleged traffickers knew or had reason to believe their products contained fentanyl but claimed to be selling different products. All 7 defendants are charged with distribution of fentanyl resulting in death. Each would face a minimum sentence of 20 years in federal prison and a potential life sentence without parole if convicted.
The Los Angeles Sheriff is launching a criminal investigation into a stolen video that was leaked to the LA Times, and he plans to question the reporter. Experts say the reporter is protected by the First Amendment. NTD's Arlene Richards has the story.
Morning, everyone.
Sheriff Alex Villanueva announced in a press conference Monday that he and other agencies are launching an investigation into a stolen video.
Remember, what was taken from the department was an active criminal case.
The video, which the LA Times published after it was leaked to a reporter, shows a deputy kneeling on an inmate. The sheriff says the department was actively investigating the incident when the video went missing. He said the investigation is not about the leak, but involves an obstruction of justice. He identified 3 individuals he wants to talk to.
So here are the 3 individuals that we want to know a lot about. This person said he gave it to this person. This person is actually authorized to receive the completed investigation. But somehow it landed in the hands of the 3rd person, the reporter from the LA Times. So now
First Amendment experts Roy Gutterman and Gene Policinski agree that the reporter doesn't have to answer the sheriff's questions. Under California law, reporters are protected from revealing their sources.
I would say this is definitely a First Amendment issue. Reporters have a right to report on public affairs and use public records.
An innocent third party cannot be prevented from use of material, even if that material was obtained without authorization by somebody else.
Both experts agree there's no violation of the First Amendment to ask the reporter questions in the furtherance of an investigation. Sheriff Villanueva clarified in a tweet that he is not pursuing criminal charges against the LA Times reporter. Arlene Richards, NTD News, New York.
Southern California held its 14th annual Orange County Crime Victims Rally. Elected officials and families gathered to honor both victims and survivors of crime. NTD's Cynthia Kai reports.
On April 25th, a crowd of community members, elected officials, and law enforcement gathered to honor victims and survivors alike of violent crime. They heard stories from families of a spouse, sibling, or child that were murdered as far back as 1977.
We have victims who passed, and we have victims who are alive today, like Lynette or Patricia, who have to live with the grief every single day. It is our responsibility to acknowledge them and to fight for them and to keep them in our presence.
The annual rally brings awareness and continues to fight for victims' rights.
And I have to share my voice not only as a survivor, but a community leader. And I have to be able to call on our elected officials to be able to fund law enforcement, to be able to fund district attorneys, to be able to empower and strengthen our community members that are out there sacrificing day in and day out for victims and survivors, and to keep us safe.
A son recalled the difficulty of losing his father.
When we lost my father, I felt like I couldn't grieve because I had to be strong for my mother, my brother and sister. I had to arrange my father's funeral at the age of 25, which is something that I never imagined doing.
His father, Eliu Gramajo, was killed while working his food truck when he was accidentally caught in a rival gang shootout on Father's Day in 2016.
Going through trial, I felt emotionally, physically, and spiritually drained. I think the hardest part was sitting in the same room with the person who killed my father.
Last month, prosecutors found Gramajo's killer guilty and sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole.
I miss my father. I love him. Although trial was very difficult, it helped me grieve. And it's not exactly closure, but it is a relief to know that the killer will pay for what he did.
Another attendee was Lynette Duncan, whose father and 18-year-old sister were killed in 1977. Duncan said it took her little sister over 3 decades to gain the strength to write her statement, recounting the incident.
38 years later, she finally wrote her victim impact statement to be read at one of the parole hearings. And in it, she started out by saying, "That's the day that I learned that monsters were real, and daddies don't always kill them." It broke all our hearts hearing that.
Brett Thomas and Mark Titch, who were 18 and 17 years old at the time, were convicted of murder. Since the first parole hearing in 1983, both men have had 10 hearings, and Duncan has been to every one of them.
But when I walked out of that parole hearing, I was different, and I knew that I was different. I was no longer a victim, I was a survivor.
At the last hearing in 2015, the judge denied parole. The Crime Victims Monument sits between the offices of the Orange County District Attorney and Sheriff's Department. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
Speaking of crime, Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon is facing an injunction lawsuit in just a little more than 1 month's time. The Association of Deputy District Attorneys filed a lawsuit against him in October for allegedly hiring political cronies instead of qualified association members. An LA Superior Court judge ruled last week that the court date will be set for early June. According to an association representative, Gascon's office requested a December court date, but the judge didn't like that. We're going to take a short break, but here's a look at what we've got for you when we come back. Now that Elon Musk is Twitter's new owner, there may be significant changes to how the platform works. One professor weighs in on the advantages the platform may now have if it goes open source. Southern California will be restricting how residents use water. we'll look at what the changes are and when they will start. And according to recent research, green energy is not quite as safe for all living things as some have previously thought. Solar and wind power are killing up to 20% of certain bird populations. That and more on California Today. Elon Musk plans to make a lot of changes to Twitter, including open sourcing its algorithm. One tech expert told me that this change could be for the better.
Professor Ahmed Bunafa is an expert in cybersecurity and AI. He currently teaches at San Jose State University and previously taught at Stanford and Berkeley. He says he hopes that Twitter's source code goes public.
An open source is really a good way to go. Why? Because instead of having 5,000 engineers that working on the code, you're going to have now 500,000 all over the world that will give you, some kind of improvement to the code. And the open source is a great way to have a good product.
On April 25th, Elon Musk stated that the company should release the source code of its algorithm and make it open source. The goal is to increase trust. At the same time, Musk said that he will combat spam bots and automated accounts on Twitter.
It means that you have pieces of the codes that people can modify. You will accept offers from others to say, why don't you change this? Why don't you change that? Why don't you improve that?
Open source software is where the software code is publicly available, though it's unclear how much of Twitter's could be released.
And this is part of the open source community. But to implement it and to have this part of the platform, it's going to go through a lot of tests, a lot of quality assurance before somebody can add something to the platform. It's not just open for everybody.
One downside, according to Eric K. Boyton, another cybersecurity expert, is that open sourcing the algorithm could reveal how Twitter recommends posts on users' timelines. That's because bad actors could then take advantage of it, according to MIT Technology Review. But open source software is commonplace in the tech world. Some well-known examples of open source software are Firefox, WordPress, and Android.
And if you look at Android as an example, you see how many features ahead of the iOS, the operating system for Apple.
Bunafa says he's looking forward to seeing the future of Twitter, where he says the number of followers a year from now will be an indicator of how it's doing. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Southern California's water wholesaler took emergency action in response to the regional drought. It is imposing unprecedented restrictions that will limit outdoor watering to 1 day per week for roughly 6 million people. NTD's Eileen Ng reports.
On Wednesday, officials of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, or MWD, said it will impose water restrictions on its member agencies that are heavily dependent on supplies from the State Water Project.
The amount of water we have available to us now is not going to be enough to carry us through the entire year, unless we do something different.
All Southern California residents and businesses will need to slash water usage by 30% to combat drought conditions. The state once again saw below-average rain and snowfall for the year. According to the MWD, the once-a-week watering restriction will impact about 6 million people in Los Angeles, Ventura, and San Bernardino counties.
We know what this means to communities. We know what we are requiring here, but we're facing a challenge. We will not have the supply to meet the normal demands that we have. And now we need to prioritize between watering our lawns or having water for our children and grandchildren and livelihood and health.
Those implementing the restriction can decide which day of the week and those who have an odd or even house number. Exceptions include hand-watering trees. The district's board approved the measure Tuesday, but it is scheduled to take effect June 1st. Those who fail to comply will be fined.
And if we don't see the cutbacks or conditions do not get better, Metropolitan Board has given me the authority to ban all watering as soon as September 1st.
Governor Gavin Newsom last month directed MWD and other water suppliers statewide to ramp up conservation efforts by advancing water shortage contingency plans.
Californians may be paying more at the pump this summer. It's in the hands of state lawmakers, but it appears the increased gas hike may come through.
Despite high gas prices, the annual California gas tax increase is scheduled to occur on July 1st. The increase exists to adjust for inflation. If lawmakers were to halt it from taking effect, they would need to pass legislation by Sunday, May 1st, as an early action budget item. According to Politico, a spokesperson for Governor Gavin Newsom said it's clear now that the legislature will not act in time to provide that immediate limited relief. But he says they're looking forward to working with lawmakers on the governor's proposal for direct payments. For 2021-22, the tax rates are 51.1 cents per gallon on gasoline and 38.9 cents per gallon for diesel. 4 major proposals have been introduced to provide aid from the high gas prices. Assemblymember Kevin Kiley's bill, AB 1638, would have removed the state's 51-cent gas tax for 6 months, but other lawmakers rejected it in March. 3 other programs are in the works. One is a $9 billion Democratic plan to give all Californian taxpayers $400 rebates, whether or not they own a car. Another is to provide $200 rebates to all taxpayers except for the wealthiest 10% of vehicle owners. And the governor plans to provide $9 billion in tax refunds to all car owners. It includes a $400 debit card per vehicle with a limit of 2 per household. The governor's administration estimates the summer gas tax to inflate by 5.6%, converting to 3 cents per gallon for gas and 2 cents per gallon for diesel.
Another city has voted to ban flavored tobacco sales. The move is part of a growing statewide effort to combat adolescent e-cigarette addiction.
The San Diego City Council voted on Monday to ban the sale of flavored tobacco products, including menthol. It passed in a 7-2 vote and will take effect in 2023. Councilwoman Marnie Von Wilpert introduced the ordinance in an effort to address adolescent addiction to flavored e-cigarettes. Local school officials also supported it.
Every school district in the San Diego County region has passed a resolution asking us to ban the sale of most flavored tobacco products because they see what's happening to their students in their schools. It is clear that flavors hook kids.
The ordinance does not apply to the sale of certain forms of non-cigarette tobacco. Those include shisha, premium cigars, loose-leaf tobacco, unflavored or tobacco-flavored e-cigarette, and FDA-approved devices for smoking. The ordinance will also align the city with the state policy by prohibiting the sale of tobacco products and electronic cigarettes to people under 21. The ordinance will take effect in January next year. Retailers who violate the ordinance may face up to a $1,000 fine. San Jose, San Francisco, Sacramento, Oakland, and Long Beach have also passed a similar ban.
For anyone who thinks that green energy will save the earth, new research suggests it's never that simple. Researchers have been gathering data on how green power generation can inadvertently kill wildlife.
A new study says certain green energy production is killing native and non-native bird populations alike throughout California. The research, titled Vulnerability of Avian Populations to Renewable Energy Production, was published through the Royal Society at the end of March. The team analyzed 23 species of birds that are vulnerable to green energy sites, like windmills and solar power plants. They found that in 11 of those species, green energy production killed at least 1 in 5 of the bird population. The team assessed the death toll by collecting feathers around green energy sites. Instead of just counting bird deaths, researchers looked at how green energy impacts entire populations. Green energy has a wide range of ways of taking bird life. Massive wind turbine blades can impact birds flying through the blades. Solar plants can easily overheat birds flying above them. Even the production of solar panels results in environmental pollution, which can impact avian populations. Natural environmental loss can also lead to unnatural bird deaths. Several groups funded the research, including the California Energy Commission, the U.S. Bureau of Land Management, and the University of California, Davis. The researchers wrote that their findings indicate a need to consider the impacts green energy production has on wildlife and nature.
Now to NTD's Thomas Christian for an update on sports.
I'm Thomas Christian, giving you the California Sports Roundup.
It's a rare honor to hear the free thoughts of Shaquille O'Neal, a former MVP and four-time champion. He believes the Lakers should keep their big three of LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, and Anthony Davis together, but need to surround them with young players who can knock down shots. Injuries sidelined Davis and James for stretches of the season and prevented the trio from ever finding a rhythm. The veteran squad, which is the oldest in the league with an average age of 30, ultimately missed the playoffs.
Definitely got to get younger. So if you're going to keep LeBron, Russ, and AD, everybody else has to be young. Very young. Can't have 5 and 6 guys in their upper 30s, because the league is getting younger and getting faster. So if we're going to keep those three, there's old geezers out there running up against these young boys. It's not going to work over an 82-game stretch.
The Lakers parted ways with Frank Vogel at the end of the season, despite the head coach having led the team to a championship inside the NBA bubble in 2020. O'Neal said Mark Jackson, who infused a young Golden State Warriors team with confidence that later helped them flourish into a dynasty under Steve Kerr, would be his pick to replace Vogel. Shaquille O'Neal has also stated publicly that he would coach the Lakers if they were willing to pay $25 million per year. Otherwise, the 19-season NBA veteran looks to be enjoying his time off of the hardwood. Last week, 49ers wide receiver and running back Deebo Samuel requested a trade. This came after it broke that he was not going to participate in any offseason practices with the 49ers organization, per Adam Schefter. Immediately, the NFL world started buzzing with the news. Deebo apparently had wanted to be paid like a running back and as a wide receiver. And because that was effectively the role he played for the 49ers last season, and the role he is officially listed at right now. If Deebo doesn't get that contract with the 49ers, he's likely to get it somewhere else. His unique skill set to be able to make plays out of the backfield or as a deep threat make him one of the NFL's most versatile players. Last season, he caught 77 of 121 passing attempts for 1,405 receiving yards. He also took 59 rushing attempts, which he converted into 365 rushing yards. Also, he caught 6 touchdown passes and also rushed for 8 more TDs, statistically just as dominant through the air as in the lane. If the Niners were forced to trade Samuel, they could expect a hefty return. General Manager John Lynch has already said publicly that he would never imagine wanting to move on from Deebo because he is just too good of a player.
As always, I'm Thomas Christian, and thanks for tuning in.
And that's all for tonight. You can join us again on California Today every weekday at 8:30 p.m. If you have any news tips or ideas for our show, or you just want to let us know how we're doing, our email is california.today@ntd.com. I'm David Lam, sitting in for Liang Zheng. Have a wonderful evening.